Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint by Sing Shong. Chapter 416. The Secret of Plotter. Part 1. 2 days passed by since the end of the Great War of Saints and Demons. The nightmare-filled Isle of Reincarnators could no longer be seen. Constellations were gradually leaving the arc for their rightful spots in the night sky. This stop is for Olympus. Constellations from Olympus stood up from their seats after the ship made the announcement. Dionysus, standing as their representative, shifted his gaze over to Zhang Huiwen and addressed her. My apologies for leaving first, even though this is a difficult period for you. No, we'll be fine, thank you. Do not be overly worried, however. He's no ordinary constellation, after all. Without a doubt, he's still alive. He lightly tapped her shoulder and soon disappeared beyond the dark dimension while leading other constellations. She stood there and silently waited until they were gone from her view before climbing down from the bow of the Arkansas. When she got to the bottom of the stairs, she found a person waiting for her, Han Suyang. Dionysus? He left. Both Chiak Jun Jiang and the underworld, too? I think they'll be leaving pretty soon. And Uriel? Han Suyang continued to ask, and Zhang Huiwen continued to answer. Most of what? They chatted about were trivial information, stuff like Hades and Persephone, Uriel, Chiak Jun Jiang's abode, etc. Some who would be leaving, some who would be staying, some who would accompany them. A part of the info was about the matters everyone knew already. The thing was, though, it was not really important whether someone knew this or that. Haiyang Yi is still completely worn out and teacher Nims are helping her out by performing Chugun Wahayol. TL note at the end. And Jihai? At the back, fixing her battleship. What about Ihansong? One would ask, while the other would answer. They walked on the corridors of the Ark and repeated this process. It was as if they wouldn't be able to hold back even for a second by not doing it. What about the kids? Well, Before Zhang Huiwen could finish her sentence, they heard the kids' voices coming out from one of the cabins lining up the corridor. I knew it. I gotta sign the contract with the darkness right now, so I can get my revenge for Hyung. Revenge? What revenge? A Juicy is definitely alive. I can feel it. Well, I also knew that. If it's Dokja Hyung, he's definitely. You need to wake up already. We need to come up with a sound plan right now. Zhang Huiwen's and Han Suyang's steps came to a halt at the same time as if they had promised to do so. They listened to the kids' conversation. Those two were bawling uncontrollably only the day before. However, the two of them, as they appeared through the cabin's window, were. I guess they will be fine, after all, said Zhang Huiwen. Han Suyang waited for a beat before asking her. What about you, then? The latter didn't reply. Instead, her gaze slowly faltered. The former stopped looking at her conversation partner, and shifted her own gaze lower, too. Zhang Huiwen opened her lips eventually. He asked me to save him. He pleaded with me to rescue him. She tightly clenched her fist. They didn't need to stare at each other to feel this emotion resonating between them. It sounded as if dry rain was falling somewhere. Han Suyang listened to that noise impassively, before speaking up. We'll have a lot of things to do when we get back. Right. I know. Zhang Huiwen rubbed her face with her sleeves, and smiled weakly. For the time being, we should go back to Seoul, right? We should. There will definitely be some bastards aiming for Seoul now that Dokja SSI has disappeared. And we'll have to sort out the law and order back home, too. Whole Telly Sujiang, though? That, well. The two women stopped talking and stared at the empty space for a while. The first person to break the silence was Han Suyang. I wish we still had you Sangha with us in times like these. I miss Sangha SSI. They had lost far too much getting here. Their gazes shifted outside the window to see the passing view of the dark dimension. They saw the stars on the faraway galaxies sparkle softly. The universe wouldn't be destroyed just because a single star suddenly vanished. There was a countless number of them, and their light would continue to exist afterward, too. But for those living on a certain planet, that particular star would be everything they knew about the light itself. Han Suyang did her best not to look at Zhang Huiwen's reflection on the window. The latter muttered in the meantime. Just what on earth has happened to Dokja SSI? The former didn't reply and began walking again. Not too long afterward, they arrived at the last cabin in the corridor. They quietly opened the door and entered to find Yu Yonghyuk wrapped from head to toe in bandages lying on a bed. Han Suyang spoke as she rummaged through her inner pockets to find a lemon candy. We should be able to find out once this idiot wakes up. Asterisk. This happened back when I was still in the middle of reading The Ways of Survival. I was scrolling down the chapter, fully satisfied knowing that I had completed the day's work, only to discover something written on the author's words corner at the bottom. Dokjanim, what do you think? I've already forgotten what that question related to. It might have been about the plot development, or he might be implying something about the novel itself. Now, how did I answer him back then? Well, such a simple twist is a bit. You thought so, too? I was startled anew by this portion of my memories. Did something like this really happen? I remembered so well about the Ways of Survival itself, so why have I completely forgotten about this part of the memories? I couldn't understand it at all. Right, now that I looked back, the author did chat with me every once in a while, didn't he? As for me, I wrote comments to engage the author. Most of the time, it was to cheer him on, or to ask questions regarding the next regression turn, but sometimes, I did try to tackle him over the novel, too. I think it was around when Yu Yonghyuk had just gone past the 600th turn. I just couldn't understand something about the novel, no matter how hard I thought about it, so I end up arguing with the author through the comment section. Author Nim. Was that a typo? How can Yonghyuk smile brightly? TLS 123 replied back. Anyone would change like that after regressing over 600 times. I thought that the answer kind of made sense after hearing it. And that must have been the first time that I began thinking earnestly about the number of times Yu Yonghyuk had regressed. Regressing over 600 times, was it? What did life even mean to a being that had to repeat such a life over and over again? Kim Dokja, Waku up. Dull pain pulsed inside my head and my consciousness returned gradually. My body felt lethargic, and terrible pain buzzed from all corners of my incarnation flesh. I barely managed to tear my eyes open, and the faint rays of light pierced into my eyes. And then, a familiar voice came flying in my ear. Looks like he's finally woken up. Yup, he just couldn't be nice about it, now could he? I smirked a little and shifted my head in the direction of the voice. However, something seemed off. So, this fool is that Kim Dokja? By the time I fully opened my eyes, I discovered myself surrounded by countless Yu Yonghyuks. Asterisk. I needed another 10 minutes or so to regain my consciousness again. I had blacked out once more, and after waking up, kept my eyes closed and tried really hard to figure out what the heck was going on here. At least, I needed to get a bead on the current situation. Firstly, the Great War of Saints and Demons was over. I was certain of that. Messages waiting in the log proved that fact, at least. You have acquired the Great Fable, Season of Light and Darkness. Your third Great Fable has completed its climax / third condition for the hidden scenario, the one single fable, has been met. Final fable is waiting for you. The entirety of Starstream is set abuzz over your achievement. Majority of Starstream-S constellations are now paying attention to your nebula. Regarding your fable, the absolute majority of the constellations are. I had finally completed the one single fable's climax / The energy belonging to an unimaginably enormous fable was now roiling powerfully inside me. The Great Fable, the Season of Light and Darkness. It was my first time hearing about such a great fable. But that made sense. The collision of the nameless mist and the apocalypse dragon didn't occur in the original story, after all. With that as the starting point, the entire world line should begin experiencing sudden and violent change. The march towards the apocalypse had sped up, so it was only obvious that the rate of the entire scenario's progress would speed up as well. Secondly, someone did rescue me. My problem began from this point on. Just who did save me? It's no use pretending to be unconscious. As an aside, the very last face I saw was that of Yu Young Hyok's, coming to save me. So, maybe it was obvious that I'd end up seeing his face now. But, the problem was not just his dumb looks, but it seems that even his head is dumb. Just like what I've heard. Why were there so many Yu Young Hyoks in this place? Not only that. In complete stupefaction, I gazed at the 5-6 coma Yu Young Hyoks currently standing around on top of the bed. Without a doubt, they were Yu Young Hyoks, but all of them were big-headed chibis with short limbs and about the same size as Kyrios. Am I still dreaming? Right, this had to be a dream. Right, the stress he put me under every single day had piled up and must have caused this horrifying delusion. That had to be it. I hurriedly slapped my cheeks, prompting the coma Yu Young Hyoks to speak one after the other. He must think this is a dream. Like a fool. He may need some time to figure out his current situation first. What an annoying bastard. Do we need to wait for him, then? I cleanly ignored them and scanned the room I was in. It was a huge circular-shaped room, everything, including the table, the chairs, the other smaller knickknacks, and even the bed I was sitting on, was circular-shaped. Where the hell was I? I thought hard and long, but nothing came up. A room with such peculiar furnishing would be more than memorable enough, but I couldn't remember ever reading about it in the Ways of Survival. Wondering if I stumbled into an area for a new scenario accidentally, I summoned the scenario window, only to be smacked in the head with the following message. Currently, Starstream is in the middle of scenario system maintenance. Meaning, there was pretty much nothing I could learn in my current situation. Looks like he's almost done with analyzing his situation. I shall ask again. Are you the one called Kim Dokja? The coma Yu Young Hyok, with a hot-tempered facial expression, asked me. Now that I took a closer look, there were different numbered cards stuck to the chest of each coma Yu Young Hyok, and the one who asked me just now had 999 written on his. I decided to answer them for the time being. Correct. I'm Kim Dokja. The coma Yu Young Hyoks looked at each other and nodded their heads simultaneously. These little guys, even though they were much smaller than the original, they acted exactly the same as Yu Young Hyok. Looks like the correct one has been brought over, then. Even the voice was the same, too. I didn't know what was going on here, but by this time, I had to accept it. I was not stuck in a dream. And thanks to some unknown crazy whims of the probability, I somehow ended up in a strange, fantastical kingdom where coma Yu Young Hyoks lived. Who are you guys? I decided to ask them first. I knew that they wouldn't answer me straightforward if they were anything like the original Yu Young Hyok, but still. One of the comas began muttering out. How pathetic. Can't you tell by looking? Yup, thought as much. If I was to be stuck in a world like this, then I'd have preferred to be surrounded by the kind, gentle coma version of Yu Sang-ah, instead. I was wondering how should I retort back in order to hear a proper answer from these guys, but then, the Yu Young Hyok with 888 written on his card spoke some rather unexpected words. With your dull head, you'd never arrive at the correct answer, no matter how long you agonize over it. So, I shall tell you. We are a part of the Great Plotter. Great Plotter? Could it be? A chilly sensation flitted in and out of my head just then. The Yu Young Hyok with 777 on his chest must have interpreted my silence on his own way and spoke in a mocking tone. Your pathetic intelligence shouldn't be enough to understand it now. Right, these guys, they were definitely Yu Young Hyok. There was absolutely no doubt about that now. If you're fully awake, then get up. Someone is waiting for you. Who's waiting for me? You'll see when you get there. I got up unsteadily and followed after that coma. The round door opened up and a huge corridor appeared before me. The one to take the lead was the coma Yu Young Hyok number, 999. I followed him. The rest of the comas trotted after us, too. I asked one of them, "What is this place?" That prompted one of the Yu Young Hyoks following me to speak up. Ungoi soup. What was that? It means, the Nyas forest. You're supposed to be a prophet, yet you can't even tell that? What the hell? Why did you say that in English, then? TL note at the end. The coma Yu Young Hyok number, 666, glared at me as if he was disappointed and turned his head away, obviously unhappy. It was around then I began thinking that maybe, those numbers represented the regression turns each Yu Young Hyok had lived through. What did Yu Young Hyok do around the 666th turn? Was that when he partnered up with the abyssal black flame dragon? I spotted the view of a silver forest outside the windows lining up the corridor. Nyas forest, was it? Sounded familiar, as if I had heard about it somewhere. However, I wasn't sure whether this place ever appeared within the ways of survival. It was then when our group encountered another one walking towards from the other side of the corridor. So, is he the one the plotter had brought along? No, could I even describe their movements as walking? Overcome with the sensation of all the hair on my body standing up, I subconsciously gripped the hilt of my unbreakable faith tighter. Because outer gods were walking towards us from the opposite side. Existences that emitted auras incomparably more unstable and ominous than any constellations. One of them sported a horse's head, while others were monstrous creatures covered in disgusting-looking tentacles. Those tentacles extending up to the air seemed to tilt their heads for a bit, before shuffling closer to my direction. No matter who looked at that, they wouldn't be able to describe their intentions as friendly at all. Unexpectedly, the one to step in their paths was none other than the coma Yu Young Hyok number, 999. He's our guest. Don't even think about harassing him. But, it should not be a problem just to have a little chat. I shan't permit it. The coma Yu Young Hyok number, 999, declared as thus, and unsheathed the miniature version of heaven-shaking sword from his back. Following that, the coma's numbers, 888, 777, and even the number, 666, they all unsheathed their weapons mounted on their backs and hips. These guys, could they even really fight? I mean, they all kind of looked like action figures, so. Maybe the other party thought the same as me, because they began emitting stubbornly persistent hostile aura towards us. How dare you? Just because you're the dependents of the great plotter. As the standoff quickly became even more volatile and the tentacles and the comas were about to start fighting, a loud thud resounded out from somewhere. Outer gods busy wiggling their tentacles about suddenly all knelt down. The only one among them still standing was the horsehead that showed animosity towards me. Another thud resounded out. Finally, even the horsehead had to slam its head on the floor. Those tremors couldn't have been a simple shockwaves of an earthquake. No, someone was intimidating these outer gods with incredible status right now. Woo, woo woo. Outer gods groaned in pain and moved out of the way. At the end of the corridor, there was an entrance leading to a huge hall. It was an open type, with the massive circular ceiling decorated by the tumbling, roiling branches of trees. I walked into this hall, accompanied by the coma Yu Young Hyoks. Thin rays of sunlight permeating in between the branches illuminated an ancient, worn-out throne right in the middle of that great hall. No one needed to tell me, but I knew it right away. The being sitting on that throne, he was the king of this forest. Not only that, I knew who he was already, too. The scar on his face, revealed under the faint rays of the sun, and the exact same white coat as mine. The being I thought I'd not get to meet again, was sitting right on that throne. It's been a while, Kim Dokja. Chapter 417. The Secret of Plotter. Part 2. I took my time studying the person before my eyes. My heart rate sped up greatly, and my breathing became ragged, as well. Something touched a box of memories that shouldn't be touched, and words began leaking out from this box buried deep within the recess of the darkness. Where is the Arondite? Are you the one hiding it? That was the first time I encountered that dude. While firmly holding me by my collars, he asked me that question. If you're not planning to answer me, then I shall use force to find out. The golden eye of Sage, gleaming brightly just like back then, was right there, waiting. A migraine assaulted me, and my view distorted like that of an abstract painting. The voice from the memories continued on in the meantime. That world you've shown me, does it really exist? Applicable individual isn't a character. There existed certain memories that should never be forgotten even if one wanted to, and perhaps the memories of that regression turn were precisely that for me. I failed to save Yu Hyuk of that turn. He left for the next turn, still wearing the white coat. I had never forgotten the sight of his back, surrounded by bright light and leaving me and Han Suyang of the 1863rd turn behind in complete freedom. You are. For the longest time I lost myself and stared at the Yu Hyuk sitting on the throne. The scar on his sunken cheeks, those dark, deeply withdrawn eyes, everything belonged to the 1863rd turn Yu Hyuk that I remembered. However, my shock didn't end there. Constellation, secretive plotter, is looking at you. The secretive plotter? Only then did I finally discover the ominous, evil aura rising up from that Yu Hyuk's entire figure. This evil was different from that of the Demon Kings. No, this was chaos that the star stream didn't recognize as either good or evil. I was about to say something, but then, something emitted bright light from within my inner pocket. Exclusive attribute, Scenario Interpreter, is activating. Great Fable, Season of Light and Darkness, is reacting to your attribute. As if it was waiting for this moment, the fable began telling its story. Two Yu Hyuks were in a certain place. Go back. You can't save anyone. The secretive plotter? As if they were stuck in fast forward, scenes sped along in my mind. They were fragmented information, sure, but still, they were also plenty enough for me to figure out the current situation. So, that's what happened. I began to gradually understand what was going on here. Next up was the sight of Yu Hyuk crashing, E.G. Hai catching him, and finally, the Ark leaving the Isle. It seemed that the Kim Dokja Company had safely escaped from the Isle of Reincarnators. Great Fable, Season of Light and Darkness, has stopped its storytelling. I sighed softly under the breath and shifted my gaze over to the existence atop the throne. The secretive plotter looked down at me from his spot at the same time. The fourth wall is strongly activating. My heart calmed down and my reasoning returned to me bit by bit. I sucked in a couple of quick but deep breaths and opened my lips to speak. If you were planning to make me panic using that appearance, then well, congratulations, you succeeded splendidly. Have you not used polite speech towards me earlier? I'm merely treating you the way that fits with your choice to appear as Yu Hyuk. I appeared completely unflustered by his aura, and as if he was amused by it, the plotter's lips twitched slightly. Not caring whether he did or not, I simply continued on. The secretive plotter. I suggest we do the 3 divine questions and answers. And why would I agree to do that? There's no way that you're the 1863rd turn Yu Hyuk. It's impossible, actually. What makes you think that? You wish to know? As an aside, there are 3 reasons, you see. A faint flash of light flickered in the secretive plotter's eyes. So, are you interested or not? Although tempting, it's not a fair trade, is it? The secretive plotter stared at me with a pair of quiet, contemplative eyes. He seemed to be thinking about something, and also, maybe a bit angry, as well. Just how long passed by like this? His left eyebrow quivered rather greatly. I suddenly recalled a certain passage from the Ways of Survival just then. Whenever Yu Hyuk makes a serious decision, his left eyebrow would quiver. The secretive plotter spoke. I'll put forth a condition. What kind? I'm sure you're curious as to why I brought you here. I nodded my head. Of course I was curious. However, you can't ask me about that. Because, I can't tell you. Some answers can only be resolved by you actively searching for the right question first. What kind of a Buddha-like utterance is that? I shall agree to the 3 divine questions and answers now. You can ask me about 3 things, but you can't ask me a question related to why you've been brought to here. Is that your condition? One other thing. When you're done with the 3 questions, you must figure out the reason you had to be brought here. Now that was something I didn't expect at all, and I momentarily panicked. What if I failed to do that? The secretive plotter didn't reply. Instead, he raised his lengthy finger and rested it on the armrest of his throne. Just that simple action alone sent a chill down my spine. Can I defeat him in my current condition? I began inspecting all the fables I possessed, from the legendary grade 1 all the way to the great fables. It'll be better for you to stop doing something foolish. It was none other than the Koma Yu Yunghyak number 999 standing next to me who said that. I smirked and looked down at him. Are you worried about me? It's annoying to remove a corpse, that's all. What are you exactly, anyway? Are you using your allotted questions, then? Good. No, hang on Aminu. Before I could finish my sentence, though, messages began floating up. 3 divine questions and answers has begun. Both sides can exchange 3 questions and 3 answers. Both sides can refuse to answer 1 question each. Questions and answers will not end until both sides have asked a question and answered it properly. You are now using your right to ask the first question. I caught the Koma Yu Yunghyak number 666 grinning slyly on the side. Sons of bitches. Still, now that things had ended up like this, I figured it'd not be so bad to hear their story now. They are my dependents. I hope you aren't planning to end your answer like that. I'd prefer for you to be a bit more in depth now that you're planning to tell me things anyway. I'd be eternally grateful if you so graciously explain yourself properly on what your definition of dependence are, whether it's something like avatar, or if it's something similar to the dependence demon kings have. I spoke as cautiously as possible to make sure that what I said didn't sound like the second question. That prompted the Koma Yu Yunghyak number 777 to sigh in admiration and speak up. He sure talks a lot, doesn't he? I wasn't talking to you. They are beings that have received my memories. You have acquired the first answer. So, it's similar to the avatar skill, then. It's my turn. Tell me the first reason why I can't be the 1863rd turn Yu Yunghyak. If you were really Yu Yunghyak from the 1863rd turn, then there's no way you'd be wearing that white coat. Why not? The stigma regression only sends back one's soul. It doesn't send back the items in your possession. The code I gave to the 1863rd turn Yu Yunghyak was destroyed as he regressed. So, if you're really from the 1863rd turn, you shouldn't be wearing that coat. Interesting. However, this is merely an item I personally purchased. Yu Yunghyak doesn't wear the color white often. Ask your second question. You are now using your right to ask the second question. I didn't hesitate and spoke up. My second question. Are you the 1863rd turn Yu Yunghyak? My question caused the secretive plotter's complexion to waver ever so slightly. Are you trying to mess with me? No, I'm being dead serious. I am Yu Yunghyak, who had experienced the 1863rd turn. In the past tense, is it? I'm merely the secretive plotter now, that's why. You have acquired the second answer. Unless one placed a special condition, one had to speak only the truth during the 3 divine questions and answers. If one didn't, then one would be swept up in the storm of probabilities aftermaths immediately. However, I didn't spot any signs of the storm around the secretive plotter. Now, speak the second reason why I can't be the 1863rd turn Yu Yunghyak. There are just too many inconsistencies for you to be the Yu Yung Hayok from the 1863rd turn. What kind of inconsistencies? If you're really him from the 1863rd, then why did you send me over there to kill yourself? Logically speaking, it doesn't make sense, does it? That's because that action would create me. It's a simple time paradox. I was Yu Yung Hayok from the 1863rd turn, and only by you killing me there would I be reborn as the secretive plotter. Sounds like you've been rehearsing that answer for a while there. It sounds so natural, too. Even if I assume that you're being truthful, quite unfortunately for you, you seemed less than satisfied after I succeeded in my mission. Also, you looked quite surprised, too. Ask your next question. No, you go ahead first. I'll ask mine last. The secretive plotter stared at me for a little while before eventually opening his lips. Fine. What is the final reason why I can't be Yu Yung Hayok from the 1863rd turn? I have a special method to find that out. I possess a skill that allows me to read the inner thoughts of the other party, you see. So? But then, the 1863rd turn's Yu Yung Hayok became an existence that I can't read anymore. I clearly remembered the moment that Yu Yung Hayok left for the next turn. The moment when he broke free from being a character, and even my exclusive skill, Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint, could no longer read him. Does that mean you can read my private thoughts? No, I can't read yours also. Then, what? However, the reason why I can't is different. Activation of the skill Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint has been cancelled. Your degree of understanding on the applicable individual is simply far too inadequate. Your degree of understanding simply can't catch up to the status of the applicable individual. I quietly looked up at the messages floating up in the air. The secretive plotter frowned deeply. I can't accept that as your reason. You are. I'll ask my last question, said I, not giving him any chance to speak. Back in the planet where I used to live, there happened to be a novel called 3 Ways to Survive a Ruined World. Almost instantly, the surrounding atmosphere changed. The expression on the secretive plotter's face sunk to its coldest yet. His eyes had become cold-blooded, as if he'd murder me at any given second. I desperately resisted that aura and continued on. This was one question that I wanted to ask all along. Secretive plotter. Are you someone who knows the epilogue of that novel? Asterisk. Yu Yung Hayok had a dream. It was a really old and worn-out dream. For some reason, he was wearing a white coat inside it. He held the heaven-shaking sword that fit him like a glove. While gripping that weighty weapon, he was fighting against someone. When he took a closer look, he realized that the person in front of his eyes possessed the exact same countenance as he did. It was another Yu Yung Hayok, but wearing a black coat, instead. He wasn't sure of why he had to experience such a dream. The 1863rd turn. Maybe, it was because he ended up running into that guy. That was probably why he had to dream about something like this. Yu Yung Hayok gritted his teeth. The gap he felt between his and the secretive plotter's overwhelming status the moment they clashed remained so vividly etched in his mind even now. Utterly disregarding his sentiments, though, the memories continued to slowly seep into him. He had become the Yu Yung Hayok from the 1863rd turn and was swinging his sword around. I'll die. I'll regress. Every time the swords collided, Yu Yung Hayok felt the despair and loneliness of the 1863rd turn. Strangely enough, everything felt so natural to him. As if those emotions were his all along, since from a long time ago. Stab. Finally, the 2 swords stabbed deeply into the 2 stomachs. This story will come to an end here. Even then, everything will start from the beginning once more. Yu Yung Hayok wearing the black coat scattered away first, and soon, even himself, began scattering as well. The memories dissipated, and the emotions he barely managed to comprehend began abandoning him. He summoned up the last of his remaining energy and looked behind. His vision blurred and he couldn't see clearly what was there. However, it felt as if he had seen a bright and pure star. I had grown curious of that world's. For the next regression. Yu Yoonhyuk's eyes shot open along with the loud noise of beep. He panted heavily and spotted the white ceiling of the hospital room. And then, also heard someone's voice, too. Finally, our slumbering prince of the forest has woken up. He turned his head to the side to find Han Suyang and Zhang Huiwen. The former bit and broke the lollipop before spitting out the stick and began growling at him. Time to tell us just what happened back there, dear good regressor, sir. Chapter 418. The Secret of Plotter. Part 3. Han Suyang's demanding tone prompted Yu Yoonhyuk to start with his story. However, his tale sounded incoherent and he repeated himself over and over again. 10 minutes passed by like that. She eventually stopped listening quietly and spoke up. Okay, that's enough. I think you're not in the right frame of mind here, so let me organize everything you said for you. You just indicate to me if I got it right. Now normally, such a one-sided declaration would have elicited a strong reaction from him, but Yu Yoonhyuk simply chose to nod his head, his expression dark, gloomy. Han Suyang immediately began her job. You went to rescue Kim Dokja. But then, someone else showed up first to snatch him up. And that someone was whom we all know, the secret of Plotter. Yu Yoonhyuk nodded again. However, that guy had the exact same face as you and was wearing a white coat. Correct. What are the odds of that being a fake? I mean, that guy's so hard to believe, right? It's possible that the secret of Plotter disguised himself to look like you. No, it couldn't have been a fake. How come? He used the fable that the me from the 1863rd regression turn possessed. You mean, that immortal, whatever chinny-sounding fable? Han Suyang thought as much, and nodded her head. Her irises expanded ever so slightly as her fable kicked into gear once more. Fable, predictive plagiarism, has begun its storytelling. The only one left out of the loop, Zhang Huiwen, tried to say something, her voice sounding confused. What are you two talking about? Are you saying that the secret of Plotter looks like Yoonhyuk SSI? Han Suyang glanced at her for a bit, before replying with a long sigh. Simply put, there are two Yu Yoonhyuks in this world line. Is that even possible? No reason why it can't be, if Yu Yoonhyuk from another world line has crossed over to this one. You can do that? Well, Kim Dokja went to another world line through a similar method, didn't he? Now, the problem here is, just how powerful a being is he, when he's capable of doing something like this? Even the highest-ranked constellations from either Eden or Papyrus couldn't cross to another world line with their own powers. However, this secret of Plotter was powerful enough to deal with the requisite probability all by himself. Zhang Huiwen's jaw dropped slightly as she muttered. Just from which world line could he? There is only one with the highest possibility, actually. The one Kim Dokja went to, the 1863rd world line. The 1863rd regression turn. The final world line for Yu Yoonhyuk as it was written in the 3 Ways to Survive a Ruined World. Yu Yoonhyuk looked at Han Suyang and asked a question. How much do you know about that world line? A bit. At the end of that world, the me of the 1863rd turn divided into 2 and fought against each other. One of them died, and the other regressed. I know. I saw it in my dream several times already. Your dream? As if she was sick and tired of the whole thing, she vigorously waved her hands about. We don't have the time to get into the details. In any case, you think the current secret of Plotter is you from the 1863rd regression turn. Am I right? Yu Yoonhyuk spoke up, his face full of dissatisfaction. It's not a definite thing. There are a few points that don't add up. Such as? The strength of the secret of Plotter far exceeded that of me from the 1863rd turn that I read about. And then? Then, Yu Yoonhyuk chewed on his lips for a while. I also got the feeling that he was hiding something from me. Such as his white coat. The white coat? My stigma, regression, doesn't send the items I possess alongside me when I regress. Meaning, there's no reason for him to be wearing that coat. Maybe, he likes the white color? I detest the color white. Isn't it possible that your taste might change? This matter can't be answered as easily as that. Are you saying that it's an issue with your gut feeling? Yu Young-hyuk nodded his head. It was as if that bastard was mocking me. Mocking you? It was as if he deliberately wore that coat. He massaged his forehead, and the words left behind by the secretive plotter flitted in and out of his mind. The third turn. You don't remember any. A weighty silence descended in the room. Han Soo-young was deeply immersed in her thoughts as she rubbed her chin, while Jang Hui-won could only smack her lips, not fully getting what was going on. A while later, the former opened her lips to speak. Alright, fine. Let's sum it all up. Logically speaking, the secretive plotter must be the Yu Young-hyuk from the 1863rd turn, but your gut feeling says otherwise. That's it, right? In that case, let's begin with this assumption first. The Yu Young-hyuk from the 1863rd turn is not the secretive plotter. Meaning, the plotter is lying to you. Yu Young-hyuk's eyes trembled. It's just my feeling, yet you are willing to believe it? It's not just anyone's gut, but yours. Isn't it supposed to be, you know yourself the best? Han Soo-young grinned refreshingly. He then addressed her with a suspicion-filled expression. Speak your hypothesis, Han Soo-young. What do you mean? You already suspect who the secretive plotter might be. Am I wrong? This time, it was Han Soo-young's eyes to narrow to a slit. Since when did you become this quick on the uptake? It's impossible for you to believe what I say, that's why. For a short moment their glares collided in midair. And through that exchange, both of them came to realize just what kind of images were floating up in the heads of the other. Not too long ago, they had discussed the possible identity of the secretive plotter. Back then, Yu Young-hyuk opined that the plotter was Kim Dokja from the future, while Han Soo-young, she. Arg, just how long are you two going to talk among yourselves? Just who is this secretive plotter? Jang Hui-won's pressing words prompted Han Soo-young to cautiously open her lips. What I'm about to say is just a hypothesis, nothing more. I don't care whether it's a hypothesis or not. I just want to know. I have been curious about something for a really long time, you know? Curious about what? What if the novel Ways of Survival didn't become reality? What are you talking about out of the blue? So, what if, somewhere out there in the universe, there is a world of ways of survival, as pure as intended and not been affected by either me or Kim Dokja? Han Soo-young continued on with her explanation. In that world where neither Han Soo-young Corporation nor Kim Dokja Company exist, let's say there is this dumbass Yu Young-hyuk who repeatedly goes through countless regressions while losing his comrades over and over again. Wait, you bastard. What if that Yu Young-hyuk managed to reach the conclusion, through innumerable losses? What if a version of Yu Young-hyuk that saw the end of Starstream through his own powers alone existed somewhere in the universe? Han Soo-young waited for a beat before shifting her gaze over to Yu Young-hyuk. In his violently rocking eyes, her reflection could be seen. And what would a guy like that be thinking about when he's looking at the current third turn? Asterisk. The secretive plotter. The constellation that didn't appear within the original Ways of Survival. Even then, a being that possessed more power than any other constellations I've met so far. Secretive plotter. Are you someone who knows the epilogue of that novel? That was the reason why I decided to ask this question. I was sure of guessing the plotter's true identity correctly as long as he provided me with the right answer. Eventually, the secretive plotter opened his lips. I am refusing to answer that question. What? No, hang on. Constellation, secretive plotter, has used the right to refuse on the third question. God damn it, I forgot about that. Both sides could exercise the right to refuse once during this three divine questions and answers. The plotter was looking down at me with a pair of eyes that couldn't be read. For a brief moment there, I witnessed the probability sparks envelop his coat. I feel tired. Enough. Now, go back. Hang on. The Q&A isn't over. Before I could finish, I was overcome with the sensation of space folding around me, and soon, found myself standing outside the hall. The sense of dejection rushed in as I stared at the firmly shut door to the hall. 3 divine questions and answers has been temporarily suspended. You still have one more right to ask a question remaining. Normally, the 3 divine questions and answers wasn't a ceremony that one side could willfully delay like this. However, this secretive plotter managed to do exactly that. I couldn't even estimate how powerful a status he must have possessed in order to make something this unbelievable happen. I pounded on the hall's door and shouted out, "Open the door. This is not what we agreed upon. I need to get back to my comrades." In that instant, a powerful status rocked the door and my incarnation body was flung away. I staggered back up to my feet and got ready to unleash my own status. Unexpectedly, it was the Koma Yu Yoonghyak number 999 who dissuaded me from doing that. "It'll be better if you don't." I sensed the ominous flow of air beyond the doorway and urgently withdrew my status. Indeed, this Koma Yu Yoonghyak was right. My incarnation body was still gravely injured, and the other party was a being so strong that the current me couldn't even guess his actual power level. "You'll have another chance, Kim Dokja." "And when will that be?" Koma Yu Yoonghyak began looking at me with eyes reserved for when looking at a dumb fool, before one of them spoke up. "Follow us. We're going back to your lodging." I felt hopelessly lost by the prospect of returning to that circular room again, but as I was now, I didn't have much of a choice. I could sense the multiple presences of outer gods looking at this way from all corners of the corridor. Thankfully, I was a guest of the secretive plotter. It was all too clear to see what would happen if I tried to escape and become an uninvited guest in the process. Go. Yup, not making a rash decision would be for the best, after all. Also, it wasn't as if I walked away with nothing from the current situation, anyway. The fourth wall is faintly vibrating. There are quite a few faces I haven't seen in a while. Looks like a group of Shantaks. I was startled by the sudden voice coming from my inside. It was coming through the fourth wall's messaging system. Judging from the way it spoke. The Devourer of Dreams? It is indeed I. Now that I thought about it, I had an outer god residing inside me, didn't I? I completely forgot about it somehow. I began thinking that maybe I could ask for his help in my current predicament. Looks like they are being friendly towards you. Being friendly? You mean that? I stared at the outer gods raising their tentacles up threateningly in my direction. The moment our gazes met, the end of one of the tentacles suddenly bloomed open to resemble a horrifying-looking flower. They are curious about you. Now that is a rather uncommon event among outer gods. I looked at that flower bud swaying this way and that as if to win me over and shook my head in helplessness. It'll be hard to become friends with those guys. Hard? Why? You must know why by now after reading this and that in the library. I walked past the outer gods emitting gloomy, foreboding aura and began recalling the final episode of The Ways of Survival. The final battle of the Star Stream is related to those outer gods. In the original story, Yu Yoonghyak lost everything still remaining with him by that point. Every single incarnation that helped him up until then all died in that war. Died because of those monsters of chaos that brought the destruction of the world. But then, the Devourer of Dreams said something rather unexpected to me. Do you know why outer gods have become the calamities? That is. I seriously pondered it for a moment, only to fall into this strange, inexplicable chain of thoughts. Indeed, it sure was a strange thing, even a novel as brimming full of detailed explanations as The Ways of Survival failed to mention the origins of the outer gods. It was at that moment a certain theory popped up in my head. The true identity of the secretive plotter and the origins of the outer gods. Could there be some kind of a connection between the two? Before I could throw out a question regarding that theory, someone engaged me for a chat first. I heard that you like reading novels. It was the Koma Yu Hyuk number, 999. I nodded my head. Sure, I do. What about it? If you want, I can tell you a short story. A story? It was then the Koma Yu Hyuk's number, 666, 777, and 888, all looked at, 999, with baffled expressions. It seemed that this wasn't a part of the plan. Not even waiting for my reply, the Koma Yu Hyuk number, 999, began telling his story. There was a wolf that continued to fight a lonely battle for a very long time. He had a goal he was chasing after, and there was a question he wanted to ask. For the answer to that question, he continued to fight. Is it an allegory? The wolf kept fighting. Hundreds of years, thousands, and maybe even for tens of thousands of years. I wanted to say that a wolf couldn't possibly live for that long, but regardless, the story continued on. The wolf eventually reached the end of the battle and became the Wolf King. And he managed to find the answer in his own way. He had to pay the price of losing his entire pack in the process, but in the end, he came to accept that answer. Because it was the best possible answer that the world could provide him with. Now with that answer, the king began roaming the world. This was a rather vaguely abstract story, yet. But then, one day, the king learned that there was yet another pack existing somewhere. Even then, this story sounded undoubtedly familiar, too. In that pack, he found the exact same wolf as himself. That wolf possessed the exact same goal as him, and was surviving for the same purpose as him, as well. I listened to the tale as if I had been entranced by it. But then, something was different. The wolf of this pack hadn't lost anything. Right now, this guy was telling me the story that the secretive plotter didn't want to tell me earlier. Finding his prey, protecting his pack, the distant goals he longed for, this wolf was achieving all those with the minimal amount of pain. Without losing anything in the process. The king watched this spectacle, and suddenly thought to himself. Slowly, so very slowly, a chill crept down on my back. If this story is brought to its conclusion as it was, then what was the purpose of the life I've lived so far? Yu Hyuk was now asking straight at me. Kim Dokja. Have you ever thought about a life like that before? Chapter 419. The Secretive Plotter. Part 4. All sorts of complicated thoughts rushed past my head. It felt as if someone was ringing a gong right next to my ear. I covered my mouth from the sudden rush of the sick feeling from my stomach. The Koma Yu Hyuks kept looking up at me as I began wobbling about unsteadily. Kim Dokja knew who these beings were. The final revision of the Ways of Survival spat out bright texts from inside my pocket. He knew, but at the same time, he didn't want to know. Kim Dokja? The Koma Yu Hyuks realized that something was wrong with me and called out. I needed to stop thinking. The fourth wall is shaking. Stop thinking. The fourth wall is shaking intensely. However, I couldn't. Pages were flipping over inside my head. As if there was a storm raging about in there, all those pages swirled up and flew at the same time to completely blanket my consciousness. Hey, you? And eventually, my vision was dyed in pitch black darkness. Asterisk. Looks like he's learned of it now. The Koma Yu Hyuk number, 41, spoke as if it was in passing. Next to him was the secretive plotter, sitting on the ancient, worn-down throne. By any chance, did you deliberately give out that hint? That wasn't my intention. I don't see any reward for you after you even prepared props to put up a show like this. The Koma Yu Hyuk number, 41, spoke as he stared at the plotter's white coat. It was the same coat as the one Yu Hyuk from the 1863rd turn wore. The plotter felt that stare. While taking the coat off, he spoke up. I wasn't putting on a show. That guy from the 1863rd should have been a part of me originally. Just like all of you. However, he opened the door and left without warning, didn't he? While leaving behind that coat, too. The Koma Yu Younghyuk number 41 took over the white coat. As if the two had been talking about something forbidden up until now, a short silence descended between them. The secretive plotter wordlessly extended his hand towards the empty air. A circular table suddenly materialized next to the old throne. There was a wine glass filled with red wine on top of it. He lightly picked the glass up. It seems that the scenario is progressing far quicker than expected. Its ripening degree is nothing to write home about. It's all because of that fool, Kim Dokja. Has the Dakibi king made his move yet? The Koma Yu Younghyuk number 41 flipped through the message log in the empty air. No, not yet. However, great Dakibis are now moving behind the scenes. The Wennies have contacted us, as well. It'll soon start, then. I guess so. Two Yu Younghyuks stopped talking for a little while. Ominous howls could be heard coming through the cracked walls of this palace built to resemble a circle. Those were the cries of the outer world's hounds searching for them. The secretive plotter opened his lips. 41st. You are the most similar Yu Younghyuk when compared to me. What an honor that is. You'll soon die. Have we not come this far for that exact purpose? They stopped talking again. Pale white light suddenly glowed in the empty air, and soon, Starstream's broadcast screen appeared there. The secretive plotter flipped through the screens as if he was bored and spoke up. There isn't much left till the end of this long story, then. Asterisk. When I opened my eyes, I found myself inside the library. Kim Dokja, so annoy ing. I heard the wall's faint voice, and shook my head to regain my wits. Sorry about that. The lights from the lanterns brightened up the dim darkness. It seemed that I was sucked into the fourth wall's interior once more. The wall had protected my mind from breaking down, in other words. I massaged my pulsing head and took quick, short breaths. I needed a bit more time before my mind cleared up sufficiently enough. How long did it pass by like that? Eventually, only one line remained etched inside my once chaotic mind. The secretive plotter is Yu Younghyuk from the original Ways of Survival. He was not the Yu Younghyuk I met in the 1863rd turn, nor the guy I experienced the third turn with. No, he was someone I had never met before. Indeed, he was Yu Younghyuk who witnessed the conclusion of the star stream before the third turn even had the chance to begin. Hang on, author Nim. What will happen to Younghyuk now? When it's like this? I recalled the last comment I made on the final chapter of the Ways of Survival. That novel came to an end and left everything up to the epilogue. The answer to the question I was dying to know. I slowly got up from the spot and took a look at the bookshelves around me. Yu Younghyuk, Records from the Fourth Turn, 8th volume. I stood there dazed after looking at the book's spine, revealed under the gentle light. The stories that I grew up reading were here. I slowly reached out towards that book's spine. My fingertip touching the end of the spine trembled faintly. This was the story that I read over and over again. Each of those phrases was my life, my blood, and my flesh. But now, why did such a story feel so alien to me now? I forced myself to grab that book, hoping to get rid of this feeling. This was a story that I could enjoy reading regardless of what time it was and which page it was, anyway. This story wouldn't betray me. If I read it, I should feel better. Just like how it always did. Rather coincidentally, the page I flipped to was the scene of Anna Croft and Yu Younghyuk in a face-off. The novel's Yu Younghyuk spoke his line. This is because of you. My hands trembled as I flipped the page. I couldn't work up the courage to read what was on the next page. Maybe, I didn't have the qualification to do so, too. I was happy reading this story. My entire life amounted to nothing but me reading about someone else's sorrow and pain. In that case, how was I any different from those damn constellations up in the sky? What will you do? I looked behind to find Nirvana there. There are 2 Yu Hyuks in this world. The librarians had gathered around me. 3 pairs of eyes were now looking at me, pitying me. Nirvana, simulation, and then, the devourer of dreams. I met each of their gazes and asked, "What do you guys think? Do you wish to acquire the opinion of this one?" Nirvana stepped forward to reply. He sounded confident, as if he knew the right answer already. No need to fall into a dilemma. Every creature started as one in the beginning, after all. You're going on about that one again? Everything was one, to begin with, so what does it matter if there are 2 or more Yu Hyuks? Becoming one with all the Yu Hyuks is the utmost important providence of the cosmos. Yup, it was my fault to ask this idiot in the first place. I shifted my gaze and discovered that the master of the cinema dungeon, simulation, looking back at me. It seems that you're suffering under the weight of the guilty conscience. Guilty conscience, was it alright to bluntly label what I feel into that sort of emotion? My hand holding the book trembled, causing the pages themselves to tremble as well. Why do you feel guilt? Are you tormented by the misfortune he had suffered? I'm not too sure. Regardless of what, you can't save him. He has already lived a life like that, and you simply read about his story. That is the summary of your reality. His voice, tinged with a certain logical sense, contained the wisdom of an ancient being who had read many stories for the longest time. The last one to speak was the devourer of dreams. It pushed up its glasses with its tentacles and spoke as if to mock me. "Oh, dear constellation. Do you honestly believe that the great plotter is asking for your sympathy?" The moment I heard those words, my emotions cooled down as if they were bathed in icy cold water. It was correct. This emotion I'd been feeling was the same thing as me insulting every story I had read. Besides, now wasn't the time to swim in these trivial emotional mires. Nirvana glibly continued on. "Looks like you've finally regained some of your lost senses. Right now, I need to worry about much more realistic problems first. I need to return to my comrades, but I don't have any methods of getting out of here." The devourer of dreams nodded its head. "I'm sure that's the case. Within the Nyas forest, he's basically the god, after all. Do you know something, by any chance?" "I do know, but there's not much meaning even if I explain. Because you'd get only further away from their origins the more you try to explain anything related to the outer gods. Just like what the recorders of fear have done. Recorders of fear, I seem to have heard a similar story once before." Meanwhile, the devourer of dreams continued on. "The entrance and the exit lay in the same place. In most cases, a door with pull me written on it would open when you push at it. You must figure out why you're here. When you do, you will naturally discover the exit yourself." I heard what the secretive plotter said earlier after hearing those words. When you're done with the 3 questions, you must figure out the reason you had to be brought here. The reason why I had to come here. When I thought about it, maybe the 3 divine questions and answers being suspended was a fortunate thing for myself. I might have been able to guess the identity of the secretive plotter, but I hadn't been able to figure out the reason why he brought me to this place. That guy, why did he bring me here? He's a being who witnessed the end of one world. The devourer of dreams spoke as if it already knew what my question was. What can compel a being who already knows of to throw himself back into the great cycle once more? In that moment, I recalled a certain moment in my life. It was a piece of my memory from a very long time ago. I was a young boy, sitting opposite my mother and reading a book resting on my lap. "Dokjaya, please read it again." What would be the reason for an existence that knew the story inside out to read it again? "Yo you go out now Kim Dokja dot." In the following moments, my view broke up and I was swept up in a whirlpool. The sight of the library scattered away like smoke. Everything spun around until my consciousness returned to where it belonged. Still suffering from the slight case of migraine and dizziness, I slowly opened my eyes along with a soft groan. Current incarnation body recovery rate, 34%. Drips of fable fell one at a time from the 4-pack filled with fables, currently attached to my arm. And there was information on my incarnation body floating up on the display in the air. Currently, the injection of healing medicine cannot be administered due to the extensive damage to your foundational fable. Natural recovery is recommended. You currently possess high resistance against elixirs. You can consume a new type of elixir to boost the rate of recovery. I struggled to push myself up. Every corner of my body still ached like crazy, but still, movements in my joints felt a lot smoother than before. BU. As expected, BU didn't reply. However, I was greeted by another message, instead. You're currently connected to a temporary channel. A temporary channel, meaning, this place was not an official scenario location of the star stream. Total numbers of connections. Number of constellations currently connected to the temporary channel, 2. It was saying 2, which was as clear as you could get, as much as the number of clicks the ways of survival got. I began thinking. If I wanted to escape from this place, there was little choice but to have another face-to-face with the secretive plotter. But, I wasn't sure if he'd meet me again that easily. In that case, there was only one other method left. Constellation, Demon King of Salvation, is calling the constellation, secretive plotter. If the bastard didn't want to meet me, then Constellation, Demon King of Salvation, is looking at the constellation, secretive plotter. Then, until he looked at me again. Constellation, Demon King of Salvation, is throwing a temper tantrum in the constellation, secretive plotter's direction. Yup, I just needed to annoy him. Constellation, Demon King of Salvation, is Constellation, secretive plotter, is glaring at you. As expected, a response came. Just before I could send back another message, though, the door to my room flung open with some force. You insane fool. Why are you making a ruckus like this? Oh, so you came. The Koma Yu Yunghayok number, 666, was glaring at me. If you want something, you can simply call for me. So, stop with the barrage of noisy indirect messages. Since these Koma Yu Yunghayoks were all dependents of the secretive plotter, they must have been able to hear my indirect messages, too. In any case, that 666 seemed to be tasked with caring for my well-being. What surprised me there, though, was that he held what looked to be some kind of a smartphone-like device. Unfitting for a mini chibi, the phone itself was the regular, big size. Why are you looking at that thing? Were you playing a mobile game? I got up from the bed and quickly snatched the phone away from the unguarded hands of this idiot. Yu Yunghayok's original profession was the pro gamer, so it wouldn't be all that strange for him to play a game of some key. Eh? Give it back to me this instant. 666 leaped up and smacked me in the waist while roaring out in anger. I simply stared at the display in pure stupefaction, though. Hey, this isn't a game, now is it? You're currently connected to 2 channels. You're currently in the area outside the scenario's control. You are now connected to the official channel via a proxy channel. The smartphone screen was displaying a rather familiar background. Dokja Juicy is alright. He's definitely alive. I can tell. Just below the live icon, indirect messages from constellations I was familiar with were cascading down as if it was some kind of a chat room. Constellation, Bald General of Justice, is nodding his head energetically. Constellation, Maritime War God, is consoling the members of Kim Dokja Company. Constellation, Abyssal Black Flame Dragon, is. What shocked me even more could be found at the bottom of the chatroom display. Constellation name, Secretive Plotter. You're currently a VIP subscriber. Due to one of the VIP membership perks, you are exempt from the cost of indirect messaging. Please select the expression you wish to convey. Currently, you have selected, Stay Strong. Please enter the amount of coins to be sponsored. You can sponsor from 50 coins upwards in the applicable channel. No amount has been entered, see. Please enter the message you wish to convey through indirect messaging. Forget about fulls like Hyman Kusanuliter, you have exceeded the word length input limit. I stopped reading there and looked down at the Koma Yu Junghyok number, 666, in sheer dumbfoundedness. Hey, I'm asking you just in case. By any chance, the one who sent all those indirect messages was. It's merely my turn today. Give up the device immediately or I'll kill you, Kim Dok Ja. The deeply blushing Koma Yu Junghyok number, 666, held the heaven-shaking sword tightly and panted angrily. Only then did I finally figure out something that I failed to understand until now. So, I had these Koma idiots to thank for all those countless indirect messages the secretive plotter allegedly sent my way. When he comes back this time, let's just throw him inside a coffin and bury him somewhere. It'll be better to let him out only after the scenarios are over. E.G. Hai said something hair-raisingly scary just then. I watched the kids sitting together on the screen and my heart began aching as if I had been sneak attacked just now. It hadn't been that long since we parted ways, yet I missed them already. Whatever the cost, I had to return to them. Because the Apocalypse Dragon scenario was already over, so if I didn't hurry back to where they were, then. Su-cha-cha-chat. That was when the probability sparks went on a wild dance. One by one, Dakibis began appearing in the skies of Seoul. I spotted Baihyung among them as well. New main scenario has arrived. God damn it. So soon? Baihyung inside the screen began speaking up. Kim Dokja Company. It's now time to leave for the final scenario.